What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fantasy Tap. Today, I am here doing our round-by-round breakdowns where we are currently on round 5. This is going to be all 12 players going in a 12-man half-point PPR league in the 5th round. So today, we are going to start off with the receiver. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the video down below, as well as hitting that bell icon. We are going round by round, as well as filling in some videos in between. So if you guys want to make sure you're getting all the most up-to-date draft tips and videos, information that you guys are going to be wanting, hit that bell icon. As we're getting closer and closer into the season, we are getting closer to draft season. So make sure you guys look out for some mock drafts, our sleepers, as well as everything else we're going to be throwing your way. And then make sure you're subscribed, because if you're subscribed, you are eligible to enter our listener league. We're going to be raffling away all 12 spots in this 12-man league. It's going to be a half-point PPR league with the grand prize of being a signed Kyler Murray helmet. Last year, we did give away a signed Tyreek Hill helmet. That was a beautiful set piece for us for a while. So if you guys want a chance for that, make sure you are subscribed down below and then get in touch with us. Send us a DM of your picture of you being subscribed to @thefantasytap on both Instagram and Twitter. And then if you guys do want a second chance into this raffle to get into the league, just make sure you're a part of our Discord community. That's going to be linked down below in the description. There, you will be able to find not only a second chance into the league, but you can find people to do mock drafts with, people that can rate your teams, give their opinions on what you should be doing with your teams this year, how your draft went, as well as finding other people for new leagues, meeting new friends, and just being part of a great community. We'll also do some other stuff that's not fantasy football related, but just like some sports betting or just general talk about what's going on in our sporting world, as well as our worlds in general. So to continue on with this round-by-round breakdown, I'm going to start out with Brandon Aiyuk. He is an absolutely incredibly talented receiver that's been used in a multifaceted way in that time in San Francisco. Last year, that team was incredibly banged up, not only on the defense, but that offense as well. Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Aiyuk all missing chunks of time at a time. And, you still saw Brandon Aiyuk having an incredible year. After week 6, Deebo Samuel coming in for majority of these weeks, George Kittle missing a majority of them. Brandon Aiyuk did not finish outside of the wide receiver 24, except in week 16, where they actually had third-string quarterback C.J. Beathard only threw for 13 completions throughout the entire game, and majority of them did end up in George Kittle's hands. Just was not a great volume week, and a lot of people do hate on the fact that the 49ers are a run-first team, or so they sound, but realistically, last year, they threw the ball 58% of their snaps. That left 42% of rushing game, meaning that there is going to be some volume in that offense. Last year, averaging 23.5 passing plays per game. Now, that leaves Aiyuk plenty of opportunity to get a strong share in there, and he's used as such a valuable playmaker in that offense and with big play potential. Outside of just his receiving stats, which are absolutely great, and we can talk about that for a while, we're going to have to talk about the fact that he does have that rushing upside. The guy was using Brandon Aiyuk actually finished as the 8th most rushing yards as a receiver in only 12 games last year, running the ball for 77 yards on 6 attempts for 2 touchdowns. Now, he does give you very, very super solid consistency for a wide receiver 2 on any sort of team or makeup that you've gotten to this point. He gives you that very, very great flex potential if you've gotten, wide receiver heavy, but he's going to average 9 targets and 5 catches per game. And that could only go up in the event that they decide to let Garoppolo air it out a little bit more, or Aiyuk just takes that next step forward as a second-year receiver into the NFL and is going to be very consistent for you. Now, if you're lucky enough to draft him as your wide receiver 2, you're going to be great. He is someone, actually, I'm confident, scared, but sort of confident that I'm going to get some week in, week out potential from him if I do go super RB heavy and he's the first guy I'm able to grab. Probably one of the only receivers that on this list that I think I could say that about. So we're going to move on to number 2 on the list. We've got Josh Allen currently being drafted at the 5.2. Josh Allen is currently quarterback 2 and another incredible talent coming off of this year. It was another breakout year for him, and it broke out into a brand new contract, $258 million over 6 years. He did have a huge increase in passing volume last season, going from 461 passing attempts to 572 in 2020 with the addition of Stephon Diggs. Man still had that rushing upside. In the past 3 years that he's been the starting quarterback in Buffalo, he's been getting 8 rushing touchdowns or more. In 2019, he did happen to get 9. But he's going to be someone that's an incredibly safe quarterback that you're going to have to draft early. If quarterbacks start slipping in your draft, if you're in the 5th round and Josh Allen and Kyler Murray have not been taken, don't grab them right away. But that 6th round, if they slip, grab them. If you're looking for a quarterback early in a draft, Josh Allen is someone that you're probably going to target. I do like the fact that he's going so much later than Mahomes and is going to put up numbers, hopefully, that are going to be similar. He did have more top 5 finishes last year than Mahomes did. Last year, having 9 top 5 finishes as on a week-by-week basis, meaning that he is very, very consistent, especially with that rushing upside that's going to continue to be there. The Buffalo Bills did not go out this offseason and really take care of that poor rushing game that they had last year. It is possible Zach Moss does take a step forward, but I don't think it's going to eat into the fact that Josh Allen's rushing ability just gives him so many fantasy points on a weekly basis, even when his arm doesn't throw out. Going on to number 3, we got Kenny Golladay, currently wide receiver 26, and I really love this receiver. I just hate the situation that he's in. After an injury-plagued 2020 season, he could be someone that a lot of people expect to bounce back. In 2019, he was being drafted at one point as the wide receiver 5 off the board, especially after such a strong finish in 2019 with Matthew Stafford up until week 5 being the wide receiver 2 on the year. The problem for me in New York is the fact that he is going to be in competition with a lot of other targets that he's not used to coming out when he was in Detroit. In Detroit, he had Marvin Jones to work against, and that was about it. Coming into New York this year, he's going to have to give some targets up to Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, Darius Slayton, Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard. All of these guys are going to take away his total volume, and I just don't think Kenny Golladay is going to be getting enough of a share on a weekly basis for me to want to be spending such a high draft pick on him. I know this is the 5th round. You're talking about receivers that are going to be, at this point, you're either gotten one receiver or you've gone completely RB heavy, or you've already filled your receiver slot, so you don't need to be taking him. Kenny Golladay is just not going to do it for you, and is possibly going to be that guy that you feel necessary. You have to put him in your lineup until you learn a better lesson. He's going to burn you, and I do think the fact that it's because it's probably one of the only people on the New York Giants offense this year that has a really good red zone threat. He is a big guy. He's great at going up for the ball and coming down with it, and I do think he's going to have some big weeks, but I do think you're going to be chasing those big weeks, and in the long run, that's going to hurt you more than ever. Daniel Jones hasn't played a full 16 games in his entire season, but even in that, he's never been on pace to throw over 550 times a year, which is a high-end number, but that's what you get from Matt Stafford year in and year out. And that's what we were expecting Kenny Golladay to get when you were drafting him so high before. And I don't even think you're going to be getting 100 targets to him this year with the amount of other targets on that offense. I do expect him to be solid in fantasy, have a great end-of-year finish, might return on it. But when you're talking about getting to your playoffs and winning your league, you need to make sure you're putting up the proper points each week. And I don't think he's going to be the guy that you're able to project those big games on. And I do think that he's just going to have a regression on that total volume, and that's one of the main culprits there. Up next, we've got Lamar Jackson, quarterback 3. Kind of fell a little bit since 2019. Obviously, the quarterback won last in 2019. MVP of the year, was an absolute monster with a record-breaking rushing year, but he's been falling. Last year as quarterback 10, it kind of came on the fact that he just wasn't airing the ball out. In 2019, 36 touchdowns. In 2020, those 26 touchdowns. They didn't push up those numbers enough. He still had over 1,000 rushing yards, which is 2 years in a row. And he still threw for 2,700 yards. But those 10 touchdowns just pushed him down so much. And I think that we might be able to see a little bit of positive regression there. The Baltimore Ravens have spent a lot of capital this year, both financially and draft capital, on wide receivers for him to take a step forward. I do think that Rashad Bateman is going to be a monster, as well as Sammy Watkins filling in a very, very nice role that might even leave the opportunity for Marquise Brown to finally be that guy that we've always been wanting him to be. Now, he does have some more security this year, and you're going to see that rushing upside from him again. Something that I do like from Lamar is that he's very consistent. He was one of only 4 quarterbacks last year not to fall outside of a quarterback 24 on any week. And the only other guys on that list are Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, obviously, you're not drafting this year, and you're taking Lamar after both the other guys I just mentioned. The receiving ability on the team did hurt him last year, but it will take a step forward this year. Um, Realistically, though, you can look for him to still have over 1,000 rushing yards and realistically break 3,000 passing yards this year. The problem for him is he going to be throwing those passing touchdowns? And I do think we get that again. And I do think those 7 rushing touchdowns for him is a very sticky number, if not a lower number than what we can expect, especially on an extra week this year. Personally, for me, though, I'm actually going to be waiting for Lamar Jackson to see if he drops a little bit before I take him. I do think there's a risk factor there, especially as a top 4 quarterback. But I do think that he's going to be someone that gives you consistency with big boom weeks that will help you win weeks and push yourself into the championship. Going up next, we've got Josh Jacobs at running back 20. He finished the year at running back 8 in a PPR league with only 33 catches, meaning that he really handles himself on the ground very efficiently. Now, he was kind of hit or miss and was on and off that injury list, even though he played a majority of the games last season. What really helps him is the fact that he found himself into the end zone 12 times on the ground, as well as getting over 1,000 yards in only 15 games. He is heavily used in the red zone for the Raiders. So that touchdown can be a pretty sticky number. I would expect to see a little bit of regression with the addition of Kenyon Drake there and the addition or the hopeful progression of both Bryan Edwards and Henry Ruggs this season. But last season, he was getting 95% of the snaps inside the 5, as well as 66% of the snaps inside of the 20. That man is going to be getting in the end zone completely. Last season, we saw Jalen Richard and Devontae Booker taking over 115 rushing attempts from Jacobs, which is fair, giving him 273 on the year, which is about 70% of the total run percentage of the team. If Drake cuts Josh Jacobs back down to about 60% of the total rushing attempts for the team, that still gives him over 225 carries, which at a 4-yard per average carry, which is low for him in his career so far, you're looking at over another 1,000-yard seasons with a realistic opportunity of 10 touchdowns with the amount that they use him in the red zone. And if he does happen to take any more snaps than that, you're looking at a very solid running back. And as an RB2, he's honestly, and I hate that I'm saying this, very safe if you decided to neglect the running back. If you're going 0 RB the first 4 rounds, I wouldn't be upset if Josh Jacobs is my RB1 and I've got the 3 best receivers and Travis Kelce in my league. I like him, and if he's got him as a running back too, you should feel pretty confident. He's going to see volume. He's going to see workload. I don't think Kenyon Drake's going to be eating into that too much, as Kenyon Drake will be that pass-catching back, and we don't need Josh Jacobs to be that. We're not expecting him to be a top 10 running back this year. If you're grabbing at running back 20 and he finishes at 12 just due to that pure rushing upside, you're going to be great and extremely happy with him. Moving on to quarterback number 4, we've got Kyler Murray. Currently my favorite quarterback due to his ADP, even though he's a little bit lower than Lamar and just a little bit lower than Josh Allen himself. But he had 8 games last year as a top 5 quarterback and 10 games as a top 10. He really broke out in 2020 with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. And realistically, the addition of AJ Green this year might be beneficial. I don't think that's AJ Green's progression this year, or AJ Green being halfway good this season, is the reason that we can expect Kyler Murray to be better. I think it's the fact that Kyler Murray is going to have another year working with DeAndre Hopkins, working on that offense, and then as well as just having more confidence in the team themselves. He said at some point during this offseason that him and the team are expecting to use his rushing ability as more of a luxury rather than a plan, which leads everyone to believe that Kyler Murray's rushing totals will be going down a little bit, but the guy's still going to be one of the top 4 rushing quarterbacks in the league this year. And those 11 rushing touchdowns that you saw in 2020 should fall down a little bit. You should still expect to see somewhere between 6 to 9 rushing touchdowns from Kyler Murray just based off of his rushing volume that you get. But with the lack of rushing volume that we might be seeing this year, that gives us a lot more passing opportunity for Kyler Murray with these additions in that offense. I do think that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be an absolute baller this year, and for that to happen, Kyler Murray is going to be airing the ball out a lot. I do think this is the year that Kyler is able to break that 30 touchdown mark, and with a questionable running back room with Chase Edmonds and James Conner being added into it, Kyler's still going to have to run the ball sometimes, and still he is so effective and efficient with it. I do think that Kyler Murray is going to find himself as a top 5 quarterback, and I do think that he's going to finish as a top 5 quarterback on an extremely consistent weekly basis, making him very safe and secure, especially when you're grabbing him towards the end of the 5th round. And if he's falling any further, you're just making out gold. Now, going on, we got Odell Beckham Jr., who's currently being drafted as a wide receiver 27. He's a great player, but the ADP is always going to be boosted based off of his name value and what we saw at the beginning part of his career. Injury-plagued seasons plus some social drama between the team of the New York Giants before he was traded kind of just trended everyone's outlook on him down, but we still expect these numbers from him. The injuries themselves have given everyone a reason to give his low numbers value. The past 2 seasons, OBJ has only been averaging 10.1 points per game in a half-point league, and that's not very great from a wide receiver 27. You're looking for someone that's going to be giving you 10 points on a regular basis while also giving you those 22 and 25-point games that are going to help you win your weeks, because that's what we want to do. He's essentially been a bum. And I don't think he's untalented. I do think he's one of the more talented receivers in the league, but I think the fact that he's just in such a low pass volume offense, the Browns actually have been ranked 28th over the past 3 years for passing attempts per game, especially since Baker Mayfield's taken over. Well, it's actually been the whole time Baker's taken over. Just not someone you're going to want to be taking the risk on, especially when there's better value on his own team. Jarvis Landry has been a much more consistent receiver, playing in a lot more games, as well as just being a much more valuable grab later on. OBJ is not even the best player on this list, and I'd like receivers more below him. Chase Claypool's coming in at wide receiver 28, and it's another guy that's not my favorite receiver on the team. He's getting drafted pretty high because of the offense that he's on, but I do think that even though the Steelers' offensive line core did take a step back this year, the fact that they drafted Najee Harris so early into the draft, as well as trying to find other options for that offensive line throughout the draft and the offseason, they're going to be running the ball more than they were last year. They did spend that capital on him to get the guy involved. Najee is going to eat. Now, for that to happen, that means there's going to be a regression in the total passing attempts from Ben Roethlisberger this year. And when that happens, you're going to see it coming from the 3rd wide receiver on that team. Deontay Johnson is going to still be getting his 10 to 11 targets per game. Juju Smith-Schuster is still going to be the number 2 on the team. Chase Claypool is too much of a big play receiver to be drafting him this early, and especially with a regression in targets this year. He just did not light up the field in total catches, only on those big plays in those huge weeks. He barely eclipsed 100 targets on 16 games, playing in every single one of them. Why Claypool did such a great job of building hype around him was because he had multiple touchdown finishes in a couple of games. Outside of that, he was absolutely nothing. He even had a week where he fell as a wide receiver 100, meaning that he was essentially useless for you and only breaking into a top 2 wide receiver on 2 occasions. And then he only had 4 weeks last season where he actually finished above his ADP. And again, he's one of those players where after you have those big booms, you just keep expecting them. So you put him in your lineup. You put him in your lineup regardless of the matchup, even because you're like, well, I don't want to miss out on that 4-touchdown game. I don't want to miss out on that 3-touchdown game. But then he gives you that wide receiver 100 week or a wide receiver 85 week, and you're losing. You're losing your week by 4 points, and it's all because of him. Don't be the guy that drafts Chase Claypool early. Grab him later. Grab him on a big matchup if Juju or Deontay goes down, and then it's Chase and one other guy. He's not someone that you're going to find any security with, but I do think that he's someone that a lot of people expect him to not be secure, and people don't want to take the risk on him, and he's one of the candidates that should drop a lot in draft values and not go at his ADP. If he drops into the 6th, 7th round, I'll take a shot on him. Coming up next, we got Mike Davis, running back 21. I personally think he's being heavily slept on currently this year because he's been a perpetual backup / fill-in. And now that he's been granted this number 1 running back role for a team, everyone's been, and including myself, has been expecting them to either use the free agent market or their trade capital to get another running back there in Atlanta that would fill the role a little bit better. But last season, Mike Davis actually finished as a running back 5, or as the running back 1 in 5 games. Outside of that, he had 5 games as a running back 24. While I don't think Davis is going to be a league winner in the sense, I do think the fact that they didn't take the grab in the free agent market or in the draft at a solid running back in Atlanta means that Mike Davis is going to be getting a strong share of that total offense. Julio Jones no longer there means 100 targets are disappearing. I don't think Mike Davis is going to be taking a large portion of that, but I do think that he's someone that can see a lot of work in both the rushing and the pass catching game. In any sort of PPR leagues, you're going to want to take a shot on that value. He's not going to be very secure. I do think that he's going to be someone that you might find, again, chasing points. But even on a bad week, you should still be getting a consistent low end floor of a running back 2, as a high end running back 3 on the week. And then with the upside of a top running back on the week as well. He's not secure, but someone I'm very comfortable taking as a running back 2 on my team, or even as a flex running back if I've already got 2 other receivers. At the end of the video, I am going to rank all 12 of these guys on how I personally would take them, regardless of how my team build is. But at the running back 21, Davis gives you plenty of pass catching upside, especially coming out of Atlanta. And I would expect him to finish as a top 20 running back in the league with the upside of a low end 1. Going off next on the board, we got Darrell Henderson, running back 22. What once was a sleeper is now everyone's favorite running back. After Cam Akers' injury, obviously there was only one man left on the team that really should be taking a strong role, and that's going to be Darrell Henderson. Cam Akers was projected to be a top 12 running back this year because of the total volume that you could expect from him. And a lot of people were expecting Henderson to be a sleeper because Henderson was balling out. Last season, Henderson started off the year as a running back 13 before getting banged up and giving up a portion of that backfield, more of a portion of the backfield to Cam Akers after week 8, finding some games where he was only getting 40% of the snap share, but still finishing as a top 12 running back on the week. Now, Henderson does find himself in a role where he will see plenty of red zone carries, as well as some receiving targets from Stafford. He's not as good as a pass-catching back as Cam Akers was going to be, and they may use some other help to refresh him. So you can't expect those consistent carries and everything else. But do expect him to handle the backfield on the 1-2 almost every drive. And after what we saw from him coming out of a 3-headed backfield last year, there's no reason you can't expect Henderson to finish as a top 24 running back, having multiple weeks finishing as a top 12 with a floor of a running back 30. Even last season in that 3-headed room, finishing the year banged up and missing multiple weeks as a running back 36. Now, Henderson does carry some injury risk. As I mentioned, he was banged up multiple weeks last year. He was banged up early in camp, but continued to play hurt. So if he can stay healthy this year, you're solid. He's a league winner. If he can't stay healthy, and that's where the risk comes with him, he's a very solid pickup as a third running back on your team. If he's your second one, you're looking a little light. You might want to be grabbing a third running back after him. But I do think that as a third running back, Henderson's going to be an extreme value for you. Coming up next, we got Travis Etienne, the rookie coming out of Jacksonville at running back 23 off the board, actually eclipsing the man he's usurping out of a beautiful role. As we all know, James Robinson came out of nowhere last year when the Jaguars found a diamond in the rough in the undrafted free agent. And first thing they do in the draft after taking their franchise quarterback is go and draft his college running back in Travis Etienne in the first round. Now, at first, everyone was expecting James Robinson to just get pushed to the wayside and Etienne to have such a strong role early on. And that's probably what's still going to happen. But in the early part of the season, we should see Etienne still getting some work while James Robinson's taking over that main running back role. In offseason camp, and even coming from Urban Meyer's mouth himself, he's talking about lining up Etienne in the wideout position, lining up as a receiver, running for the ball for Trevor Lawrence. In his last 2 seasons in Clemson, he had over 1,200 receiving yards on over 80 catches. So it is not unbelievable to expect Etienne to be an extremely great pass-catching back. We saw J.D. McKissick last year line up in that wide receiver role and actually lead the running backs in targets with over 114 last year. I don't think Etienne's going to have those same numbers, but I do think that he's going to have very usable numbers. And I do think those numbers get better and better throughout the year. So he is another guy where I'm not comfortable grabbing him at his ADP. If he falls, great. There's a lot of hype around him, and a lot of people are expecting him to have such a strong role early on. With the rookie quarterback, I am a little hesitant to be jumping all over this team. I don't know how Urban and Trevor are going to be running this offense, and we've got nothing to go off of. based on it. Now, I do think ETN does get himself a strong role more and more towards the end of the year, and especially around that fantasy playoff time, he's going to be a very solid guy. So again, if you're drafting him as your running back too, you're making a mistake. If you're drafting him as your third running back, someone you can put on the bench for a couple weeks and just see how that offense is rolling, you're going to be in a great position. So make sure you guys do take the risk if you can afford the risk. He is high risk, high reward. I mean, you should expect a little bit of time before you can comfortably place him in those lineups and see which situations and matchups he's going to be best suited for. But I do think in a half-point PPR or a full-point PPR league, he does have great value. And then finishing up the list at the end of the 5th round, currently going is Mark Andrews at the tight end 4. Pretty inconsistent for a tight end this high. Realistically, not someone I'm very, very hot on. And I'm sorry, he's actually tight end 5 right now. Kyle Pitts did move up into the 4th round. Mike went over him in the last episode. So if you guys are looking for Pitts, make sure you guys check that out. But he's very inconsistent for a high-end tight end. He did finish as a tight end 1 on week 10, as the tight end 1 on week 10, which was his best finish of the year. But that was on a week where the second best tight end scored 0.1 behind him, and Mark Andrews only scored 11 points on the week. That means the differential between tight end 1 and tight end 15 was only 2 points. So not a great achievement for him, just another solid week. But you only saw him finishing above a tight end 10 on weeks where he scored a touchdown. He does someone that does get a pretty solid volume from Lamar last season, getting over 55 targets. But it's those touchdowns that really keep him rolling. In 2019, he finished as a high-end tight end because Lamar threw 36 touchdowns and Mark Andrews caught 10 of them. Last year, on only 6 touchdowns, you're going to get those tight end 6 numbers. Part of the reason I don't trust him going into this season is, again, as I mentioned with Lamar earlier, is that passing volume. They spent so much capital on other receiving options in Baltimore this year. There's no reason that Mark Andrews should be expecting the same target share that he does. Lamar Jackson does not throw the ball enough for Mark Andrews to be a top 5 tight end while keeping any of the other receivers involved, but they're going to keep them involved with the amount of money that they've spent on them. Mark Andrews should still be a good tight end, especially on those weeks when he does have that touchdown upside, but I'd be much happier taking some guys a little bit later in the draft who have a little bit more week-to-week value outside of that touchdown dependency. Guys like TJ Hawkinson, who's going to be a top 3 wide receiver on his team. Noah Fant has a lot of upside. Logan Thomas, almost the next 9 guys on the list. I just don't like the value and the ADP of Mark Andrews, mainly because of where he finished 2 years ago. I just don't see him doing it again. And again, much more comfortable with the people behind him. Now, just to give you guys a brief rundown of my list, in the order that I would draft him, in the 5th round at my 5-1, I'd be taking Brandon Aiyuk. After that, I'd go Josh Allen, then Kyler Murray, then Lamar Jackson. Sorry for all you Lamar fans out there. Then I'd be going Mike Davis, half-point PPR, then Josh Jacobs. Then I'm going to be taking Darrell Henderson, Chase Claypool, then Kenny Golladay. Now I'm feeling comfortable with Travis Etienne at the 5-10. And then I'm pushing OBJ and Mark Andrews to the back of my list because I feel like they're players that you definitely want to wait on and not take at this spot. So, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this round 5 breakdown. Make sure to let me know who you guys think I'm right on, what I missed, who am I wrong on, where are the big breakouts, and where are the big values. Currently, for me, I think that Josh Allen, Brandon Aiyuk, Mike Davis, and Josh Jacobs are all kind of really, really solid values, especially this late in the draft. People that should definitely finish above their current ADPs. Obviously, Josh Allen he could finish as quarterback 1 again, but I don't expect it. But he's going to be finishing as a top 5 quarterback and very solid at that. So make sure you guys are subscribed. Hit that alert down below. And again, make sure to check out that Discord link down below for your second chance to get into our listener league this year. Alerts so you guys don't miss out on round 6 coming up soon, as well as our draft strategy videos coming out every day. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.